First News with Keeler in the morning on WIBX and WIBX950.com.
Brian Thomas is the urban and economic development director in the city of Utica, and this proposed Artspace building, this apartment building, and the parking lot next to the Stanley has a lot of people talking, and he's on the line right now. Brian, good morning.
Morning, Bill. How are you?
Good. So first off, it was a conversation that we had yesterday. How is this? Why have you guys been keeping this quiet? Why have you been keeping it out of the papers, out of the news cycle? Why you keep it secret from us?
Well, I would argue that we haven't been keeping it secret.
Interesting.
As Becky mentioned yesterday when she was on with you, the city has been working with Artspace for roughly the last 5 or 6 years. They came to the city as a result of various people in the community that were familiar with their projects in both Buffalo and Patchogue, and felt that with the strong artist community that we had here in the city of Utica, that housing for those artists would be a benefit to the arts community as well as the city of Utica and the greater Utica region.
So it's been in the newspaper. It's just something no one really picked up on. And now all of a sudden that it seems to be moving forward, which we'll get to that, people feel like it's just one of those things. I think we automatically go to nefarious thoughts. Like you guys were keeping this from us because you didn't want us to know about it, so you could spring it on us and we couldn't stop it. That seems to be the complaint with everything that we don't agree with, I'm afraid.
Unfortunately, that does seem to be the case in a lot of the times. But as Becky mentioned, there was a very public market study that was done with a survey of the artists in the community and around the region several years ago. From there, this project has been talked about as part of the city's downtown revitalization initiative, the $10 million award from the governor, and that this project has been a part of that. And there were numerous public meetings that discussed both the DRI and Artspace specifically.
How close is this to happening, and what has to happen for it to be approved and for it to move forward? Well,
the biggest piece of the financing puzzle is tax credits, which Artspace is currently working on the application that would be submitted to the state for those tax credits. They're looking to do that within the next month or two, I believe, is the plan. In order to submit that application, they need two things from the state to satisfy the state. One is site control, and the second is having most of the approvals in place. So the Urban Renewal Agency did enter into an option agreement with Artspace at the end of December of last year. The option is sufficient evidence of site control in order to submit that tax credit application, and they're currently in front of the planning board for site plan review and approval. That would satisfy the state's requirement for having most of the approvals in place. That application, once it's submitted, will be reviewed by the state, and I think Becky has indicated publicly before that a decision wouldn't likely be made until later this fall, maybe early winter, with construction hopefully to start in next year.
So there's no approval process through the Common Council. This, if this goes through, this project is happening.
No, because it's on city land.
Okay.
The Common Council approval would be required in order to sell the property.
Yep.
But again, we wouldn't be looking for Common Council approval until Artspace has the funding in place. So a Common Council vote isn't likely to happen until the end of this year, beginning of next year.
Oh, wow. So, Brian, do you understand the concern, and what are your thoughts on the concern about you're taking up there isn't a ton of parking over around the Stanley, and you're taking away some spots. I know they said, Becky said on the show yesterday there would be a net gain of 5 spots with a lot the city wants to put in, but at the same time, you now have 40 tenants moving into that building.
And they'll get 40 spots.
Can you talk about that concern and what it is from the city's perspective?
Sure. The car parking lot, which is the official name of the parking lot next to the Stanley, has about 130 spaces. As Becky mentioned yesterday, Artspace is looking to build on the front half acre of that lot, which would displace a number of parking spaces. The city owns 2 vacant lots behind what's currently the Lotus Garden back on Park Ave. I have proposed that the Urban Renewal Agency would construct with its funds a roughly 40-car parking lot back there, which would accommodate the spaces lost due to the Artspace project, and we'd end up with a net gain of about 5 spaces. It'd be fully lit, in keeping in mind safety concerns. There are 6 handicap spaces up near Genesee Street. Those would be pushed back. They're still maintained. If Artspace were to move forward and build the project, it would be shifted back towards Park Ave about 60 feet.
Somebody was complaining about, they were worried about the Masonic Temple.
Tom called in about
that they would lose parking back there.
Well, I think he said included in the 13. I'm sorry if I'm wrong on this. I think he said included in the 1,300 spots in that area that Becky mentioned. Some of those are parking spots at the Knights Templar, and he said we have events going on, so you're not guaranteed to have those accessible when they have shows at the Stanley. I think that was his concern. But can you talk about that?
Absolutely. The 1,300 spaces that Becky referred to are public spaces. There was a question, too, of whether there was a map available of those spaces. And if you go on the city's website, under the Division of Off-Street Parking Bureau, and click on parking facilities, there is a map that shows you the public parking that's available downtown. 1,300 spaces includes 130 spaces in the car park parking lot, roughly 250 spaces in the Union Blandina surface lot, 450 spaces in the Kennedy parking garage, the city-owned parking garage, and then roughly 525 spaces, I believe, in the Washington Street parking garage. All that adds up to the 1,300. It does not include any privately owned spaces, such as the Masonic parking lot.
Is Kennedy open? Parking garage, is that currently open, or is that under construction?
It is open.
It is open.
And isn't that getting improvements through the hospital project? Are there improvements being done?
Washington is the one that's attached to the hotel and currently does have supports in it. So I don't know that the entire supply of parking spaces, which I think is about 525, are currently available. However, the Common Council has allocated money to that to the renovation of that garage. And that garage is also included in the city's DRI for some funding for additional renovations.
Talk about the open air parking versus having a building there, and the image that it sets off for a downtown district.
Well, Becky touched on it yesterday, but essentially, along a main street such as Genesee Street is for the city of Utica, it's important to reestablish the street wall, which is the face of the buildings along the street, along the right-of-way. To have a parking lot on your main street, it's not what you're looking for in terms of good urban design. You want to have reestablished street wall. You want to have good architecture, active storefronts, buildings with activity in it that result in activity on the streets. That's good urban design, and the parking lot should really be behind the building.
Brian, what do you, there's a lot of, it's shocking when you see all the construction that is going down. And if this actually happens, it would mean a new building construction happening right next to the Stanley Theater. You look at the road project downtown, Nexus, the fact that there's going to be a parking garage going up. There's a new medical building that's going to be constructed by a company outside MVHS. Of course, there is the downtown hospital happening, a complete transformation of downtown Utica right now. Historic transformation. What's your assessment of it all? Do you ever step back and look at everything that's happening right now?
I think this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that we have in front of us, and Mayor Palmieri is making the most of what we're seeing. And who would have thought 15, 20 years ago we'd be talking about some of the problems that we're talking about now with parking and downtown activity, and it's a good thing. But I think it's all problems that are solvable. if we sit down and put our minds to it, I think we can resolve a lot of the issues as it relates to Artspace.
To Artspace, what about the parking garage, the hospital parking garage?
Well, that's a discussion at this point between the city, the county, and MVHS.
Do you think we're close there?
I think it's possible that there will be some movement in the coming months.
Okay. All right. All right. I'll take that as an answer. That leaves it's almost like the weatherman saying, or the weatherwoman saying, oh, it's going to rain. It might be sunny, and we might get some clouds out there.
It's
today.
more like the Farmer's Almanac saying we're going to have a really cold winter.
And they're never wrong.
And they're never wrong. Yeah. All right. No one can say, Brian, you were wrong on that answer. So,
can I?
That was my goal. Bill.
Okay. Fair enough.
One more question. I forget the name of it. It's so obvious it escapes me. What's the little waterfront Utica has behind all the hotels? The Utica
Harbor.
The Harbor Point. Any update there that you
I thought
can
that
talk?
was a trick question.
Yeah, I'm sorry. No. Any update there you can provide? I'm just curious because there was a lot of talk about it going back a couple of years, and I know the city opened up so you could, at least when you drove by, you could kind of see some of the water there. But what is the plan for that? I heard years ago it was baseball parks. I know they're putting hotels around it. What's the future of Harbor Point?
Well, the city recently completed the reconstruction of the bulkhead wall, as well as an extension of Wirtz Ave for access into the 16 acres, which the state is transferring to the Utica Harbor Point Development Corporation. The city, the LDC, the Harbor Point Development Corporation, has asked for proposals from private developers and is currently reviewing proposals for both the 16 acres as well as the 1933 building, which is on your left as you would enter towards the harbor. And we're working with developers that are interested in developing that. As you mentioned, there are athletic fields too that are part of the plan, and that those lands are currently under control of National Grid. And the LDC is in discussions with National Grid about securing site control for those properties and then seeking funding in order to construct those athletic fields.
Can you talk about any plans that have been submitted, whether it's housing, whether it's entertainment, whether it's retail? Can you shed any light on the proposals, I think you called them, that have been submitted?
Yeah, the master plan for the harbor calls for a mix of uses for the 16 acres, including residential and niche retail. And the developers that we are talking to are in line with that vision. In terms of the 1933 building, that's going to be largely a mix as well. It may be more retail and commercial and less residential, but again, that's the LDC is in discussions with developers about both parcels.
We're talking to Brian Thomas, Urban and Economic Development Director in the city of Utica. A couple more questions. I want to start with Pat, who's on the line in Utica right now on parking. Pat, you're on with Brian Thomas. Good morning.
Yes, what a great subject. I have a question, and maybe this is the best time to get it answered because either I missed something or it's not been talked about.
Yep.
Remember when the state building was first built? There was a parking garage behind there. And evidently, because of problems with it, eventually it was knocked down. Was there ever any plan to rebuild that? And is that still a viable option of parking for us downtown, to have that state building parking lot rebuilt?
Brian,
as you noted, as the caller noted, that is state land.
Right.
When the garage was demolished by the state, there was a surface lot put in. I don't know that the state has ever considered erecting a new garage in that site.
No, I wish we would have fought for it.
Yeah, because I got to tell you, worst parking in the world over there.
I mean, somebody should have pursued it. Maybe I understand it's maybe you can't speak for the state, but those are lost opportunities. I love the fact that you're talking about this project because these are the kind of problems we need to talk about and hopefully solve, because we need all these projects.
Yep.
But I am sympathetic
Absolutely.
to what that might mean to the Stanley and difficulty, and I hope something can be worked out.
All right. All right, Pat, that brings up Pat, thank you. You bring up a really good point in that these are good problems to have, as opposed to the problems of nothing going on. We're now arguing over something that is proposed and construction and investment. That's a good thing, especially if you're the director of urban and economic development.
It is, and that's really been my goal and the mayor's goal since he took office is to have the kind of development that we're seeing now and that raises the kind of problems we're talking about now. But I don't believe the problems that we're talking about are anything that can't be solved.
Okay, and then one more question. Somebody asking about the that area back there, which would then be behind this building, so up there near Lotus Garden. This person is concerned that it would be dangerous back there. What are your thoughts?
Again, our design calls for lighting so that the area would be safe and secure. And it does require a little bit more of a walk, but I think as downtown continues to develop, we're going to have to come to a new mindset that we haven't had to, except for the last 20, 30, 40 years, that you're going to have to walk further from where you're parking your car to your ultimate destination.
Listen, if you tell me the next thing you tell me is there's going to be increased traffic, I'm moving, okay? I don't like traffic. I don't like walking.
As I said yesterday, Brian, we don't wait for nothing around here.
Well, especially after just leaving Tampa, you don't know traffic up here. We got it lucky. But with regard to that parking behind, next to Lotus Garden, let's say for whatever reason this Artspace project doesn't go forward. Can we still go forward with the project to add 40 spaces and lighting to that lot?
Great question.
We still could, sure.
Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely. As I said, it's city-owned land, so.
Okay. Okay, Brian, anything else? Have we exhausted all possible questions? I'm sure we haven't, but we'll do it again. Let's do it again, Brian. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Have a great day. That's Brian Thomas from the city of Utica. This is, I guess, the point that Pat made is a pretty good point, and that is we're better off. We're in a good place when we're arguing over progress versus arguing over the lack thereof, I would say.